Shalom and welcome to Inside Israel News, your source for unbiased and thorough analysis of Israeli news, politics, and current events in the Middle East. I'm your host, Mensch-Kight. Inside Israel News is back. A ceasefire has been announced. It looks as though the rocket fire is going to cease from the Gaza Strip. Hamas and Islamic Jihad have been firing rockets out of the Gaza Strip for about 11 days, and that is what has caused the late crisis, with Israel responding by bombing the Gaza Strip, terror targets and infrastructure of these tyrannical terror organizations, and that has gone back and forth for 11 days. Well, now, apparently, ceasefire has been agreed. That will go into effect at 2 a.m., in Israeli local time, and that should theoretically bring an end to the current round of rocket attack. Now, it's kind of important to note, as I'll talk about a little bit more in depth later in the program, that this is coming without any major successes by Hamas. They managed to launch rockets at Israel, but they didn't manage to do any substantive damage, and the damage done to Hamas has been substantial. And that is one of the reasons why they're willing to agree to a ceasefire. They wouldn't be agreeing to a ceasefire if they thought they could withstand the punishment for much longer. Also, obviously, whatever propaganda victories they've won, they've won. And again, more on that in a moment. President Biden called Bibi Netanyahu, and they had a talk just a couple days ago. Biden was saying he expected some kind of de-escalation of the conflict. Of course, it's always up to Israel to de-escalate, right? Because Israel is the one that causes all this. Sure. In any case, Bibi said that the operation would continue as long as necessary. And obviously, a ceasefire has been agreed to, but that has been agreed to because Hamas is at least saying that they are willing to stop firing rockets. Again, the Hamas firing rockets is why there is a conflict. Once they stop firing rockets, then Israel will have no need to defend itself. So with the ceasefire going into effect, it has drawn criticism from right-wing political parties on the drawbacks of the ceasefire. Obviously, this leaves Hamas intact to do this again in a few years, unfortunately. And it hasn't really resolved anything. We just keep going through this. Every so often they fire rockets. The Iron Dome is able to intercept most of them. And, we get a ceasefire. And a few years later, it's the same thing. They start firing rockets. We shoot some of them down. There's a small loss of life for Israel. We bomb the snot out of Gaza. And we just keep repeating this cycle. And so a lot of people on the right are concerned, well, how do we end this cycle? Well, obviously, as long as Hamas exists as a powerful terror organization that is well-armed, well-financed, especially by Iran, and continues to receive the support of the international media and their sympathies, they're going to continue to do what they do. Right. Gideon Sa'ar, who was a major competitor for Bibi Netanyahu this last election. If you go back and listen to earlier episodes, I describe what Sa'ar has done. He used to be a member of Likud and was a competitor with Bibi in recent leadership elections a few years back. Obviously, he did not win the leadership of Likud. He has left the party to form his own party in order to compete with Bibi for the office of prime minister. But at the end, voters did not seem to have the same confidence or faith in him that they have in other leaders. And so he came in at 6 seats, meaning that Benny Gantz, whom everyone thought his poll numbers had collapsed and that he would be not much of a factor in the election. In fact, for a good number of polls, his party was polling down at the threshold where he might not have earned seats at all. But he managed to pick up more seats than Gideon Sa'ar. So Gideon Sa'ar kind of collapsed at the end. Again, all of this stuff is in earlier episodes, and earlier episodes also describe the structure of the Israeli government, how it works, and give everyone a better background on that. So I do encourage everyone to go back and listen to especially episodes 1 through 15, but also the supplements that describe the structure of the Israeli government. All right, so there's the propaganda fun. Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, who was elected to a 4-year term in 2005, and there's been no election since, and he just canceled elections that were supposed to happen this spring. So that tells you where he's at. Has called Israel's operation in the Gaza Strip state terrorism. So the leader of the Fatah terror group, who is the dictator of the Palestinian Authority, supposedly elected, but hasn't had an election in 15 years, 16 years now, he calls this Israel's self-defense state terrorism. Wow. And, of course, the international press gives him this headline, and they don't do anything to point out the points that I just made, that this man is the leader of a known terrorist organization, right? He's a terror leader himself. So I guess you could say he would know terrorism when he sees it. But he shouldn't have the credibility to say something like this. That should always come with the caveat that basically terror leader claims that Israeli self-defense in Gaza is state terrorism. That's an honest headline. But Abbas says Gaza operations, are state terror. That's a biased headline because it doesn't expose the fact that this man is himself a terrorist. It would be like, name any dictator, right? You say Hitler says Stalin is a terrible dictator. All right, you would know, I suppose. In any case, you need to talk about who these people are and why that is the case. The IDF was concerned prior to the ceasefire that Hamas was looking for some major success before the ceasefire, some kind of a victory against Israeli forces, anything. They fired an anti-tank missile at an IDF bus, and this only lightly injured one IDF soldier. So thankfully, the others in the bus were able to get out unharmed. But Hamas was looking for something that they could point to and say, hey, we won a victory. Killing 11 or more Israeli civilians not being enough to justify the cost in lives and materials that they have suffered because they're fighting Israel, because they attacked Israel, launched this unprovoked attack. Energy Minister and Netanyahu ally Yuval Steinitz, who is a member of Likud, obviously, he's a very close friend of Bibi Netanyahu. He has said that an occupation of Gaza may be necessary to disarm Hamas at some time in the future. Now, when he made these comments, it was before the ceasefire, so he was still in the mindset that might be needed. It's kind of an interesting thing when Steinitz speaks, because being so close to Bibi, he can say things. Since he is not the prime minister, he can float policy balloons. That is trial balloons. He can put out an idea that Bibi can't say out loud, and it has the credibility of maybe eventually becoming government policy. So it seems that he was putting out the idea that an occupation might be necessary, and Israel has been gearing up for a ground invasion if need be. But Hamas has now backed down, and I think what you're seeing there is Israel's willingness to fight them and to destroy them, of course, puts them in a position where they want a ceasefire. Right? Obviously, Hamas wants to survive. They don't want to be destroyed, and so they now survive and live to terrorize another day. And that's how this goes every time. But it does show you that when you have a certain resolve, that resolve is a strong deterrent to terrorism. And I think that's one of the reasons we didn't see anything like this during the last U.S. presidency, because the United States then had a strong resolve to stand up to all of this stuff. And so, obviously, there was no benefit to such attacks. And we're back from the break. So, as this never-ending conflict continues to unfold before us, there's not much we can do about it at this point. It just keeps going and going like this until somebody figures out on their side that they can't win. And only until they know they can't win, they will continue to pursue the path of terrorism. And it's going to take a lot of effort to change that. Although with Arab states slowly making peace with Israel and normalizing, those strong relations have cost a lot of money that dried up a lot of funds that used to go to the Palestinian Authority. And in time, pressure from the Arab states could bring some change to that. We will see. In other news, the United States approved a sale of $700 million in arms to Israel, routine thing. The U.S. has an agreement with Israel where we send foreign aid to Israel, about $3.5 billion per year, about three-quarters of which has to be spent in the United States. So buying American equipment and uniforms, ammunition, guns, things of that nature, manufactured in the United States. So in essence, with that foreign aid, the only difference between that foreign aid and, say, the hundreds of billions of dollars that we spend on our own military is just that the hardware isn't going to be used by the military. But the same defense producers, defense contractors in the U.S. who are building tanks, manufacturing guns, uniforms, and other such for our military are also doing the same for the Israelis. So it's still jobs and revenue here in the U.S. A little bit of that money Israel is able to spend elsewhere, but for the most part, that is spent in the U.S. And that just helps Israel with its weapons and keeps them supplied. And for the small amount of money the U.S. gives to Israel, we gain a significant strategic advantage because the bad guys who are attacking Israel, if they were able to win, would then proceed to terrorize our allies in the region. The Arab allies in the region would be subjected to militancy and terrorism themselves, but also Europe and the Mediterranean would likewise. So and that's, again, Iran, the effort to deter Iran, Israel is itself almost a complete deterrent to Iran just there. But along with the Arab allies that are slowly starting to come to Israel's camp and form the Abrahamic Alliance, the Abrahamic Accords, as these allies come together, they will seriously overmatch Iran and put Iran back in their place. It's going to take time. Obviously, if the U.S. presidential election had gone the other way, it is probable that more countries would have come forward by now, and the U.S. would have a very strong position vis-a-vis Iran and with strong allies in the region. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, so there is those things are all kind of on hold. There's the kind of a status quo returning to the Middle East, especially with this conflict. On the Iran front, the European Union official Enrique Mora has said substantial progress has been made in talks with Iran over the nuclear deal. So the EU and the U.S. are in these talks. Europe is actually being a little bit tougher on Iran than the U.S. is at this point, having taken our previous President Trump's position in large part because, of course, the European governments can see that Iran is not keeping to their end of the bargain and that they are developing ballistic missiles that can reach Europe. And obviously Europeans have a sense of self-preservation, so they're being a little tougher than the U.S. Unfortunately, U.S. negotiators have taken the position that President Trump backing out of the nuclear deal and putting tougher sanctions on Iran was the problem, and that getting rid of all of that will make everything better. And that's not proving to be the case, obviously. Iran is looking at the rocket barrage in Israel as a major propaganda victory. The Iranians are shouting and celebrating. The Iranian government has distracted the world from Iran's nuclear program. They have won the propaganda victory, even on the Arab street, that it's Iran that's fighting Israel. And as Arab governments continue to align themselves with Israel against Iran. And so this is a big problem. Iran continues to try to position itself as the main militant aggressor in the region, and that gives them strength and shows that they have a certain, what the French might call élan, and that élan is giving them the power to take over other countries, as they're trying to take over Yemen from within, and Bahrain and a couple of other countries. So this is how Iran acts. Speaking of Europe, German, Czech, and Slovak ministers toured the damage from rockets in Petah Tikva to show solidarity with Israel. So a number of European governments, at least, are seeing through the propaganda and what have you. Unfortunately, propaganda abounds. A large number of Jewish employees at Google called for Google to support the Palestinians. And this exposes the central problem in the Jewish community, that for so long, especially going to college, Jews have been browbeaten by the anti-Semitic attitudes in academia that they're ashamed of being Jewish. They're ashamed of Israel. They're ashamed of our history. They're ashamed of our religious beliefs, and they want to do everything they can to collaborate with and cooperate with and help those who want to murder Jews. And so this sort of Jewish Stockholm syndrome that we get out there is really disheartening, and it's saddening that that is the case. Unfortunately, it happens, and it has been a major problem in the Jewish community for a long time. It should be obvious by now that for all Jews that we have this problem, and we need to stop it. We need to find a way to encourage our fellow Jews to love our history, love our traditions, love our Torah, practice their religion, and at the very least be confident in who we are and in our state, the Jewish state. In any case, when I spoke in an earlier episode about how there is talk of Israel shifting priorities to connecting with and building stronger ties with the evangelical Christian community rather than with American Jews, the reason for that is that Christians support Israel and tend to support Israel more zealously than a lot of people who are born Jewish do, because of this Stockholm syndrome, because of this particular problem. So that is, again, a sad commentary on the state of the Jewish community. News on the political front. Rumors about a possible direct election for prime minister were floated again recently. In a previous episode, not too far back, I spoke about the possibility of a direct election for prime minister and its history in Israel. There were 3 direct elections for prime minister in 1996, 1999, and 2001. And what Israelis found is that it was very fractious, that in 1996 and 1999, the voters would vote in majority for one particular prime minister from one particular party, but then would vote for smaller parties instead of voting for that main party in the Knesset, meaning that that led to a more fractious Knesset and greater difficulty forming a government. And in 2001, they held a direct election for prime minister without changing the majorities in parliament, and that left things a little bit complicated there as well, until the 2003 election, where Israel went back to the normal way of simply having a Knesset election and then a prime minister arises out of that. In any case, you can go back to previous episodes and get a recap on that. But one of the problems with that is that it would be costly and a little bit of a waste of time at this point. At this juncture, Naftali Bennett is the most popular candidate to succeed Bibi because he is farther right than Bibi, or at least as right as Bibi Netanyahu. But he's not likely to run against him in a direct election. Gideon Sa'ar collapsed in his efforts to unseat Bibi Netanyahu and isn't in a great position to run against him either. And after forming a unity government with Bibi Netanyahu, Benny Gantz is not in a great position to run against Bibi either. So the most likely candidate against Bibi in any direct election would be Yair Lapid, unless they all decided to get together behind Gideon Sa'ar or someone else. But in all likelihood, no matter whom they put up for prime minister against Bibi Netanyahu, perhaps might not be the case with Bennett, but whoever they put up, Bibi's going to win. He's going to pull a majority and he's going to win, and that would show that he should be prime minister. So it is something of a foregone conclusion that unless Naftali Bennett were to run against Bibi, the great likelihood is that Bibi would win a direct election. So it's not necessary even to hold that election. The question, of course, though, in the greater political scheme of things, is that the Change Bloc, which has 51 of the 120 seats in the Knesset, wants to get rid of Bibi and will not work with him at all. And the pro-Bibi bloc, which has 52 seats, 1 seat more than the Change Bloc, they want Bibi Netanyahu to continue in office, and at all costs, basically. And there are a few parties in between. The 6 members of the Joint List which is made up primarily of Arab parties. They usually don't participate in Israeli politics, but they have recommended Yair Lapid for prime minister. At least 5 of the 6 of them did. And there's also the 4 seats of the Ra'am Party, or United Arab List, led by Mansour Abbas, who has been willing to support an Israeli government either way in order to achieve what he is seeking for domestic concerns for the Israeli Arab community. But with the recent rocket attacks and what have you, he broke off negotiations toward that end, and it's entirely possible he may resume now that there is a ceasefire. And then there's the Yamina Party, led by Naftali Bennett, and Naftali Bennett has aspired to be prime minister, even though he has only 7 seats out of 120 in the Knesset. But somehow, either Bibi Netanyahu or Yair Lapid on the other side has to cobble together 61 seats, a majority that is half plus 1 of the 120 seats. And getting there is complicated. You're looking at the change bloc needs 10 seats to have a majority. Bibi Netanyahu needs 9. And that is complicated. Naftali Bennett has made a U-turn. He was negotiating for a rotation in office with Yair Lapid, where Bennett would be prime minister for a year or perhaps 2, and then Lapid would come in for a year or 2, depending on how they worked out that arrangement. But when the rocket attacks began, the mounting pressure from right-wing voters to have Yamina back out of those negotiations became intense. And number 2 in Yamina, Ayelet Shaked, is apparently not willing to support the left. And both Bennett and Shaked are vying to get back into the Likud party. So it'll be interesting to see whether they are successful at that and what their ultimate goal there is. In any case, pressure has intensified on right-wing parties to try to form a right-wing government with Bibi Netanyahu. And that may involve his continuance in office for a time. Gideon Sa'ar was purportedly thinking about the possibility of joining the government with Bibi and playing on that technicality that he had not promised to serve under Bibi in a coalition, but if perhaps they set up a rotation in office where Gideon Sa'ar would be prime minister for a time, that he could argue then that he was not serving under Bibi but beside him, alongside him, as is play on words here. But in any case, the fact is we still have the change bloc, we still have the Bibi bloc, and it doesn't look like anyone has a majority, so Israel could be going to a 5th election. There have been 4 elections since 2019, and because Bibi Netanyahu continues to hang on to office, and the change bloc continues to attempt to unseat him, they have been unable to be successful. There is a major impasse here. And it would be ridiculous for Israel to go to a 5th election because, after all, if 4 elections have not been able to resolve the question, then the question cannot be resolved. Either Bibi Netanyahu is going to continue in office, and the argument there, as I've described in earlier episodes, the pro-Bibi argument is that with all the things going on in the world right now, it's dangerous to change leadership, and it would, the argument for Bibi is that he should continue in office because Israel has been secure and prosperous under his leadership, and that his strong leadership would be needed in a time like the current time. The argument against it is he's been in office for 12 years consecutively now, and a 3-year stint before, which puts him at almost 15 years in office. And Bibi is now the longest serving prime minister. His record is longer than David Ben-Gurion, who was the founding prime minister of Israel. So obviously it makes sense that the founding prime minister would serve for a while, but Bibi Netanyahu has outlasted even him. And this is the impasse. Either Bibi stays or Bibi goes. But the fact is, neither side has been able to win. So if you want to, let's say, revisit the wisdom of King Shlomo, King Solomon, where he said, we'll split the baby down the middle, right, to determine which of the 2 women was the real mother of the child who would have his best interests at heart. But it's become this term in mediation where we seek a middle ground. Maybe Bibi serves and stays on for a couple of years, and then someone takes over after him. But some kind of compromise has to be reached between the 2 factions in order to resolve the political dispute. Now, as I've mentioned a few times before, there is a presidential election coming up in Israel, and the Knesset will elect a president, a majority of the members of the Knesset being necessary to a choice, so 61 out of 120 will need to vote to elect a president. The Israeli president is a figurehead ceremonial office for the most part. It does have some powers, I'll talk about here in just a second, but it is not like the presidency of the United States. It's more like being the Queen of England, the ceremonial role as the head of state, and you'd get to do, if you're president, you get to do a lot of tours and speaking engagements and meet with different groups of people, but it doesn't have a role in the daily political life. One of the key powers of the president is a mild power of appointment. For example, the head of Israel's central bank and a few other offices. But for the most part, the president is sort of in the background of Israeli politics. And they play a role as a cultural leader more than as a political leader, let's just say. And can draw attention to issues, but unlike the prime minister and the cabinet, the president doesn't have any power to act on those things. Doesn't get to make decisions that lead that way. However, they can influence public opinion or try to draw public opinion, public attention to an issue and influence public opinion on it, and that is taking place from time to time. Now, the presidential candidates that have announced, or there were a number who announced and several have backed out. So far, it looks like the two candidates who have emerged are the Jewish Agency chairman and former labor leader Isaac Herzog. Now, I mentioned before, in Israel, everybody has a nickname, and Isaac Herzog, or Yitzhak Herzog in the Hebrew, he is called Buji. Everyone calls him Buji, and if you say Buji in Israel and don't, unless you're referring to someone else who's named Buji, unless you have a friend in your circle, oh yeah, my friend Buji who lives down the street. If you say Buji in Israel, you're referring to Isaac Herzog. He's very famous and well known for reasons that will become clear in a minute. So Buji is running for president, and his main opponent is Miriam Peretz, who is a recipient of the Israel Award. Miriam Peretz has been an educator and a devoted Zionist for a long time, and I'll talk a little more about her history in a few minutes. But one of the things that she has done that has been that has given her name is that she lost two sons who served in the IDF. Two of her sons died fighting for Israel. And she has gone on tours and done a lot of speaking about loss, about grieving, and about the importance of Zionism and the importance of the cause of Israel. And she would know about that importance because she has sacrificed considerably in the loss of her two sons for Israel's security. A couple of honorable mentions of people who had thrown their name in, but who have now withdrawn their hats from the ring, let's just say. Former labor minister and judicial expert Professor Shimon Sheitrit, who had thrown his hat in the ring and was being considered. Well-known singer and actor Yoram Gaon was also considered, and apparently some Likudniks were supporting him, members of the largest party, the Likud party, but he has dropped out. So that's left the two candidates that we have. So let's talk about the two candidates for president of Israel real quick. Buji Herzog, Isaac Herzog, again, everyone knows him as Buji, is the son of General Chaim Herzog, who served as a general in the IDF and also was the sixth president of Israel for 10 years. Back in that day, the president of Israel served a 5-year term and could serve up to 2 terms. But in 2000, there was a corruption scandal, and as a result, the sitting president had served only 7 years out of served for a first full 5-year term and only 2 years. So anyway, they changed the law at that time so that from then on, the president would be elected to a single term of 7 years and would not be eligible for re-election. So once elected president by the Knesset, you serve as president for 7 years, and then that's that. In any case, the Herzogs, one of their ancestors was the chief rabbi of Ireland from 1922 to 1935, and was also the chief rabbi of the Ashkenazic Jews, the European descended Jews within Israel, from 1936 to 1959. So the Herzog family is very well known. The Herzog name is very popular and very well established. And again, his father served as president. So Herzog is, I hate to say named but if you in the U.S., if you hear of the Clintons, the Bushes, the Kennedys, we have political families who are just well known and well, I would say to some people well regarded, but in any case, big names that are very well known, and the Herzogs are among these families. Whatever you think of the political families, I'm not going to go into that, but of course, Israelis are very opinionated. So if you go to Israel and ask about any of their great families, everyone has an opinion, and so they all have something to say about the Netanyahus. They all have something to say about the Herzogs and all of these different families, and everybody has an opinion. In any case, so Herzog himself has served in government a few times as low-level ministers. He was the leader of the Labor Party for a number of years in recent time. He was attempting to win in get Labor back into office, and he served as the leader of the Labor Party from 2011 until he was succeeded by Shelley Yakimovich. Now that he was not successful. He didn't win the election, and he was an important political leader for a number of years. He was able to stay on as leader of the Labor Party for a while, and he did not succeed at winning. Now, I actually met Buji once at an APAC conference, the America-Israel Public Affairs Committee, where we gather once a year, a lot of Jews and Christians and others who are interested in Israel. And he was speaking there, and it was interesting to meet him. But, of course, the Herzogs are associated with the Israeli left. He was a member of the Labor Party, and so he sort of represents the left side of the political spectrum in this campaign. So then, thus, presumably, Miriam Peretz is going to represent the right. And Miriam Peretz is an interesting candidate for president, especially in that she is Sephardic, or rather, she is descended from Moroccan Jews, from the northern Africa and the Middle East. She was born in 1954 in Morocco to Moroccan Jewish parents who emigrated from Morocco to Israel in the 60s. In the 1960s, it became very, very uncomfortable for Jews living in Muslim countries. In fact, a good friend of mine in Egypt at the time spent 3 years in jail. He and a number of other members of his family and congregation were imprisoned for 3 years for being Jewish. Whatever charges were thrown at them, it was because they were Jewish, and they got locked up for on these false charges for as long as the Egyptians could keep them locked up. Finally, they were able to get out, and of course, they and their families fled Egypt and Morocco and all these other countries for. In those cases, several of my friends obviously came to the United States ultimately, but a lot of Jews fled to Israel, which is part of the point of Zionism, is a safe place where Jewish people can go when they're being persecuted so that they can live in peace and prosper. In any case, Miriam Peretz has lost two sons to who were serving in the IDF to various battles against terrorists, and this is, one of the main reasons that she is much beloved. Again, as a teacher and a public speaker, she is very, very well known. She's been speaking for a long time about loss and about supporting Zionism. So she's a valuable candidate for president. So these are the two candidates, Buji and Miriam, and they're going to be contesting that election, and we'll see how it goes. Buji has a lot of political friends, including on the right. He has a number of political friends within some of the far-right parties, so it's entirely possible that those people may break with their party and vote for him. It's entirely possible that those parties will whip their votes for Miriam Peretz. Again, in terms of the makeup of the Knesset, from the center to the right is 80 seats out of 120. The center left, which includes 10 seats for Arab parties, and mostly the Yesh Atid party, Labor and Meretz, they make up altogether 40 seats, 1/3 of the Knesset. So the votes are certainly there for whoever is running from the right. Well, the ceasefire is good news if it holds, if Hamas actually follows through and stops firing rockets at Israel and peace is restored. It's good news, at least in that the violence will temporarily end, even if it doesn't provide any kind of long-term or even permanent, semi-permanent solution. But that means that Israelis can return to their normal daily life with, to the extent that they can, without fear of rocket attack. And so hope for that. Thank you, everyone, for your prayers and your good thoughts, your support in opposing media bias and all of that kind of thing. That's all very, very much appreciated. The people of Israel very much appreciate those who help them. And I, for one, appreciate when my fellow Americans make our support for Israel known and argue against some of the really dumb things that are said. In the future episode, I'm going to talk about the origins of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, so-called, or the Arab-Israeli conflict, more accurately called, because it goes back before the people, the Palestinian quote-unquote people were invented out of thin air and with whole cloth to invent a new group of people who can supposedly make some kind of a claim to the land that was never really theirs to begin with, since most of them immigrated from other countries. Please visit the Facebook page, Inside Israel News, to stay up to date. And if you like the page, then you'll see the news as I'm able to post it. It's between episodes and keep you up to date. Also, visit politicalvanguard.com, where Inside Israel News is housed, and you can find our episodes there and listen. You can also find Inside Israel News, depending, you may be listening there now, on Apple, Spotify, Podbean, and other podcast services, thanks to Anchor. And of course, all listens are appreciated. Let your friends know. Make sure that everyone knows where to get the news, the real news about what's going on with Israeli politics from the insider. You can get the inside baseball, the inside scoop. With that, I will say, Lahitraot, goodbye.
אולי נפליגה בספינות מחוף אילת עד חוף ועל המשחטות הישנות יטעינו תפוחי זהב. כל זה אינו משל